So I came back around today to do a little bit of work on the Battle of Gettysburg, and one of the first things I wanted to kind of lock down was finding terrain for the game, basically all around the battlefield in the city. And it had been kind of difficult until I came upon some technology called LIDAR. And if you don't know what that is, this graphic right here is a really good explanation. It's basically terrain data around the Earth, the United States and other parts of the Earth, where the space shuttle and aircraft, and you can even have vehicles on the ground driving around with these laser scanners and scanning, but most of what we have came from the space shuttle or satellites or aircraft, and they shoot these laser light beams down. Sounds very Star Trek, and it returns back data on height. So it's really good for getting information on terrain. So here on, because we're in Pennsylvania and Gettysburg, here is the Pennsylvania Imagery Navigator. Now each state, or even, well, mostly at the state level I've found for Maryland or Florida or Pennsylvania, have a repository for all of the types of terrain and elevation data in their state. Now, if you're looking for global, like the entire Earth and less specific to the state, the USGS, US Geological Survey, has a pretty massive repository on all the different data sets for DEM and terrain data, and also the LIDAR data. So if I show it, it's because it's pretty much covering such a massive area, and they're holding all of that data. It's very limited to what you could get. So for the terrain data here for Gettysburg, it was just this area, but I needed to get Round Top and all of this in here too, so it just didn't work out. But I did find that Pennsylvania themselves had all of this information, and you can see here by looking at it, it shows you where all of the roads are, it shows you where the rivers are, the hills. And the really good thing about this is this website on this state is you can go into a tile, right? This is a tile of a geographic region here, and this number 1900210 PS represents that geographic tile. So I can right click on it and go to LIDAR or topographic here and download this LAS file, okay? What's important to remember is when I start looking at these LAS files, they don't really tell me anything about where this geography or geologic information or terrain information is around Gettysburg. So I have to rely on these numbers. So if I know where the city is here, this is the main core of the city. This is a tile that starts with 19 and ends in 2110. So I would look down for my, and it's this tile right here, so that represents that. So the LiDAR scanning returns a point cloud, which isn't really geometry with faces and polygons, but it's really a bunch of tiny little laser points, so laser scanned point cloud data. So what I did was I found a open source program called Cloud Compare, and it's free, so open source. You can open it up, and I can go to, say, that patch that I had, and we'll open it, just hit apply and yes to all, and it will show me all the points. Now it looks a little crazy, so I'm going to kind of remove, and we'll go back to that. It's a little more visible to look at. And we can start looking at this area of Gettysburg's point data. So there is a river, clearly. And when we zoom in, you'll start seeing the points. And the crazy thing is you'll see some that are sort of floating, and those represent usually trees or elevated things. And they're really just little dots in three-dimensional space. So how can I use this in the game? How can I use this to for actual like polygon geometry that the player could walk on in the game? I can't use points, right? So the cool thing about this software is I can select the cloud data and go to mesh, and we'll just convert it, and we'll wait a minute. I know if you're not into development or software development with games or whatever, this stuff all might sound a little confusing, but you know, bear with it, I guess. So now I have an actual 3D mesh that I can export out as 3D geometry. And it looks rough, right? This would only be a reference. I would never be able to actually use this information in a game, but we can see where all the buildings are. I can see where all the roads are. But the most important thing that I need for the game are not where these buildings are and stuff like that, because most of these buildings are from today. Today is in the 21st century or whatever, and I need to I need the terrain from the the late 1800s for Gettysburg. So looking at it now, you can see the 3D mesh, and I'm going to go into a side view to show you the really important aspect. So the really important aspect here is the terrain's height. So now I have all of the information and data to see where kind of these mountainous sections are, and the little spikes and all that stuff are where the trees would be. So that's actually kind of helpful too, even though they look really nasty and messy. It shows me that, well, there's a cluster of vegetation here. But the most important aspect that I need for this game is this terrain, the bumpiness, the rise in elevation, because that stuff is accurate, and maybe given the erosion and weathering that's happened over the last 150 or 60 years since the Battle of Gettysburg occurred there, the terrain would be sloped slightly different. But really the geological formations and stuff here are going to be very similar to how they were 150 years ago. So this is extremely helpful. And what I'll do is I'll bring this into 3D Studio Max, and we'll start modeling or retopologizing a new mesh over top of that. And that'll allow me to build a really optimized mesh for real time. And so I have, if I go back to my map here, I have grabbed about 9 of the tiles. I've grabbed these 6 in the center, and then these 2 up top here. I'm going to have to really look and see how much area that covers, but I really needed to grab all the ones down here really low because I needed round top. I need big round top and little round top. And then parts of the battle further in after day 1, they drove the Union outside of the city here, and I think they kind of scattered either to the northern area up here. So we need some of these tiles up here for that terrain as well. So I thought I would just give you guys a little bit of an insight into these resources and how you go about getting real world terrain into your game, where you can run over the real topography and topology of the Gettysburg area there. Anyway, all right, thank you for watching.